someone say, hey. I heard you say, hey. Say, hey. Say, oh. Say, hey. Oh. Hey, 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 hey. Welcome back from lunch, y'all. As you remember, I'm your tour guide for the day. I'm here to bring you that post-lunch energy, so you gotta get all focused. Now, how many people have full bellies and happy hearts? Yay! Well, when you think about that full belly, make sure you are mindful of the nourishment sponsors who made sure to give you that good, yummy, sustainable food. I also forgot to mention something this morning. So I told you to go see the B Corp community group, as you know, and of course you're gonna do it because you just love the B Corp community and you think they're great people, but also they have a challenge where you could win a trip to Costa Rica. Yes, Costa Rica, anyone? So if you go over to their table at the B Corp Community Hub, they will have these instructions on the back that tell you how to win that trip to Costa Rica. So if you have not been there yet, you should definitely go, and you have to have all entries in by December 1st at 2 p.m. So you still have a chance, all right? Okay, so let's get kicked off. Now, what did I ask you all to do this morning? I said bring something with you to every session. What did I say? Do you remember? Joy, that's great. Something about the moon. Yes, moonshot mindset. And so I asked everybody to bring that moonshot mindset, but I never told you where I got mine from. So one part of that is just having ancestors pour into me their wildest dreams to escape from their existing realities. That's just one of them. But the other piece is I actually got to work at NASA when I was a high school intern. And I worked on the space station. And something told my little teenage self that if we can put people in space, imagine what we could do with the space that we have. So I founded my company a decade ago. It's called CapEQ, and our vision is to change how the world does business. And when I started it 10 years ago, people discouraged me. They were patronizing. They said, that's not how the world works. Well, you want to know why? Because somehow along the way, people started equating capitalism with take all you can, make money at any way possible. And instead of that short-termism that focuses on profit, we need to focus on the holism that is about value. You see, profit and value are not the same thing. Don't let them fool you. And we're having a spiritual, are you feeling like you're having a spiritual experience here? You feel it in your bones? Well, let me tell you about my holy trinity of capitalism. It's about an exchange, a respectful and sustainable exchange of value. A company creates something of value, it pays its employees fairly for that value, and consumers benefit from that value. That is the holy trinity of capitalism, and it is driven by our shared values, which honors, centers, and supports the leadership of people who have been historically marginalized, and stewards and protects the only planet we have. And so if that's what we're trying to do, if that's what that's about, we have to shift from an economic mindset that's about profit and instead have an economy that is focused on the most important stakeholders, and that is our people and our planet. Now, to learn more about how B Corp is doing just that, I'd love to invite Dr. Ellonda Williams to the stage.
To be here. Oh, there I am. I'm so excited to be here. I was looking at the calendar just yesterday and we were chatting and we were like, it's been like 3 years already since anything like this. I was at the last Champions Retreat. It is a completely different experience, but I think absence makes the heart grow fonder. So like we're back at it again, and now we're gonna be talking about one of my favorite things is JEDI. I think that that's an acronym that most of us understand. We're gonna talk a little bit very quickly today. I have 15 minutes to get you all up to speed on what JEDI means to B Lab Global and how that interacts with our globalized network. I'm Ellonda Williams. I'm the Director of Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at B-Lab Global. And we're going to start our conversation really, really quickly on talking about loss versus sacrifice. Are those two things, would you say they're the same or a little different? Little different, right? Loss versus sacrifice. It's going to make sense. So loss really is like, you don't really typically have a choice when you lose something, right? You don't choose to lose your car keys. You don't choose to lose your cell phone. You've lost, you've taken a hit, right? Something that you didn't necessarily expect or want to have happen, but sacrifice is very different. Sacrifice is about giving something up, and it's usually about giving something up that you'd rather have. You'd rather keep to yourself. Maybe you earned it, maybe privileged, bestowed it upon you, right? But loss and sacrifice are very different. And when we're thinking about our vision and our mission and the economic changes that we're trying to make to business, it's really important for us to take into consideration loss, not versus gain, but loss versus sacrifice. And we're going to talk about how those things come into play. So at B-Lab Global, when I started 4 years ago, crazy, it's bananas to think that it's been 4 years, but I started off as the Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. EDI, DEI, there's lots of different acronyms that have happened and changed and adapted over the last couple of years. But equity, diversity, and inclusion is something that we've all heard, we've known to love. Equity and equality, same, different. Very, very different, right? Equity and equality are not the same thing. Equality makes us feel good. We hear the word a lot of times equated with fair. That's fair. Be fair. Well, the world isn't fair. Systems aren't fair. A lot of things aren't fair. So we can't just make it about being fair. Equity is really about giving people what they need, giving communities what they need, students what they need, giving information out that is going to help gain access. Everyone has different abilities to gain different accesses, so equity is really about thinking about what people need to gain that access. Diversity is a word we all know and love. It's about difference. It's about bringing differences together. Looking around this room has changed in the 4 years that I've been here. The faces, I know, it's exciting. The faces are different. The experiences, the people here that are different. I hope that some of you feel different being here today than maybe you felt being here 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So we're changing and we're adapting. Inclusion is just about that. Making sure that you being here today, you feel like your unique experiences and the way that not only you experience the world, but how the world experiences you is something that is welcome to be here, that your experiences are things that people are uniquely interested in. Justice is a newer concept that we started thinking about, and justice really is about the systems. A lot of the systems that we work within, and we think about healthcare, education, when you think about these systems, they weren't built on equity. They weren't built to be equitably experienced by all humans on the planet. And so what do we do when we operate utilizing systems that were built inequitably? We have to take them into consideration. And we have a globalized vision and a movement that entails across the globe. We have to take into consideration how these different experiences intersect with the systems that were inequity built. Our vision here, say these 3 words highlighted with me. A collective global vision is that of an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system, right? So those things that all kind of go together, inclusive and equitable, we're working on a system. How do we do that? We have to think about loss, and we have to think about sacrifice. We have to think about what we're willing to give up in order to accomplish our vision. So a little bit of historical context, how we got here, B-Lab Global. We started having an EDI conversation all the way back in 2015, probably a little bit even before that. And we started off like a lot of businesses, right? You do a survey, you ask people how they're feeling, you ask people if they've got what they need to do the things that they need to do. And we realized that individuals, women, people of color, even at B-Lab, were not having the same equitable experiences as some of their other counterparts. It's common, right? So we jumped into a lot of action. We had volunteer committees. We worked on trying to dismantle things. We started, what do? You track and you train and you measure and you come in with the trainers and you have 1 hour EDI sessions and everyone is feeling really good, and then you do another survey and maybe it's gotten better and maybe it hasn't, right? So we really started broadening that conversation. We started talking about anti-racism. We started talking about systems. We started talking about justice. They hired me. We built a team. We put money and budget behind this work at B-Lab. And that work was really focused internally at first. And then we realized, well, we're a globalized movement. We have lots of global partners. We have stakeholders across the globe. What does JEDI mean outside of B-Lab Global? What does JEDI mean in other parts of the country? What does JEDI mean across the globe? And we started to realize it's different. It's not the same. Words like anti-racism, even words like diversity are not felt and realized and actualized the same way. What are we now going to do? So we started envisioning what our movement would look like if we started to involve our global partners in a different way. And as we move forward in the next couple of years, we're embedding not just anti-racism, but we're embedding what equity looks like. And it's really been important for these past couple of years. Last year in spring 2022, we created the B-Lab Global inaugural JEDI strategic plan. We have adapted our JEDI vision from being a team that sat on people and culture, which is HR, very common for a lot of businesses to start in HR. We then adapted that team yet again, and we moved over into our operations. And finally, I'm really proud to say that now our JEDI team sits in strategy, where it should be. Because in order for us to think about the work that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, and to think about where we want to end up in 5, 10, 15 years in our movement, JEDI and justice, equity, and diversity, these things have to be embedded into our strategic vision. We realized very quickly, we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to create a strategic plan that embeds JEDI yet. So we created a separate strategic plan that focused on what we needed to do so that in 3 years, we're at the point that not just the JEDI team, but that everyone across the organization has the tools and information necessary to think about how JEDI can be embedded into their everyday work. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a finance person. That's not my job. But how can I shift JEDI into thinking that we got to get it past your JEDI teams? You've got to enable and empower and support your teams into thinking about JEDI for themselves. Don't relinquish it to one person or two people or a team. So we're continuing to do that and look at ways of working for our leadership, for our senior leadership committee. Right now, we're working with our board to look at our policies and our practices and how are we growing our board and having conversations with the leaders to make sure that they understand how to embed JEDI into the work that they do. Additionally, it's important for us to remember that the work we do at B-Lab Global goes much farther past B-Lab Global. We are a movement, yes, and so the work that we do at B-Lab Global, we intersect with our global partners like US Can, why we're here today talking about their work, all the way into our B Corps. We're at like 5,000 now. I think Ellonda let us know that we're growing by hundreds a day, something. We're growing really, really fast, and our B Corps are looking different. And I'm really excited that our B Corps are looking different because diversity is going to help us get where we want to go when we want to actualize our vision. Our stakeholders and those that work with our B Corps are watching what we're doing, watching how we're showing up, watching about the different language that we're utilizing. And finally, what about society at large? I can't watch TV. I don't watch TV that often because I'm kind of like a Netflix girl. But when I do watch TV, I can't watch TV for too long before I see a B Corp commercial, which is kind of cool to me. I don't know if you all like it, but I get excited. And so what about all the organizations that are not B Corps? They hear that. They hear what we're doing, and they want to know more. Every organization may not be a B Corp, may not be a B Corp yet, but the values and how we show up across the globe, people are watching. So really quickly, I'm going to talk about how we got to where we are today, right? We talked about our strategic plan. And what we decided to do is we wanted to look at what are some things that if everyone worked on, if everyone took the time to take this into consideration, How can we move toward our vision, inclusion, equitability, and regeneration? We talked to our global partners. We did surveys and asked lots of questions. We had stakeholder groups. We proposed lots of different things, and we came up with 3 critical pillars that we are instilling into every single thing that we do. The first one is racial equity and justice. There is no one thing that you can think about, or one entity, or one space that doesn't include racial identities, that doesn't include how people experience the world, and as I said earlier, how the world experiences them. That's very, very key. So thinking about how people show up, what people's individuals' needs are based off of their racial background and the experiences that they have is really key. And if we think about that in our stakeholders and our conversations and all the work that we do, we're going to be moving the needle. My favorite, shifting the power of influence. Sometimes power is imaginary. Sometimes power is just made up. Sometimes power is earned, and sometimes it's just given. So shifting the power of influence and distributing leadership means inviting people to the table and trusting that their experience is their experience. And trusting that while their experience might be different than your experience, it's valid, it's real, it's something that has to be taken into consideration. And you have to sometimes be willing to say, I don't have to be the one to make this decision. It's not up to me to decide, and that is okay. That's harder for some of us than others. Those of us who've been making the decisions for a very, 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 very long time, it gets difficult to say, nope, I don't have the expertise to make this decision. And if we're a globalized movement that focuses on diversity, sometimes you have to be willing to understand you have blind spots and you have gaps, and you have to allow someone else to lead. Lastly, accountability. None of this really matters if we can't hold ourselves and each other accountable. Accountability means doing what you say you're going to do, but more importantly, that you take ownership over the outcomes of your decisions. You take ownership over the outcomes of your decisions. That means that you are taking into consideration how people experience the decisions that you have made. You cannot do that without cultural exchange, open dialogue, asking why, asking questions, and being willing to understand and believe others. We are consistently looking at ways to hold each other more accountable and hold our B Corps more accountable. Looking at our vision one more time, if we can actualize racial equity and justice and understand it's not about Black, it's not about white, it's about experiences and how people experience the world and the world experiences them. If we're willing to shift power and distribute leadership so that it's a little bit more fair in terms of who are making the decisions, and then we're able to hold our B Corps, hold each other, hold our leaders. Leaders are not above being held accountable. Leaders are not above being asked why. Where it's okay to push back and do something different, then we can create more equitable systems. We can provide and create opportunity for better ownership, and we can include diverse representation that feel as though that they can be part of this movement, not now, but into the future. So I ask one more time, what can you stand to lose versus what are you willing to sacrifice in your work, in your team decisions, in your strategies, in your finances, in your philanthropy, when you're working with the communities? What are you willing to sacrifice? Don't just focus on what's good enough to give up. It's been great chatting with you. Come find me. I can talk about this all day, and thank you very much for your time.
Please welcome to the stage, Andy Fyfe.
Enough to say it's my honor to follow Dr. Ellonda Williams, dear friend, mother-to-be. I'm Andy Fyfe from B-Lab, US and Canada. I'm not sure how many champion retreats this is for me, but I do know I spent a third of my life working at B-Lab. Good thing I turned 21 last week. But I say that because I think following what Ellonda just shared with us is we look at our time, we look at our energy of what we invest into things we work hard for. And if you believe in that work and you love it, then you got to accept when you're put in check. And Dr. Tiffany Jana, you might not remember, but you told me with a whole other group one time, is that if you ever put in check, treat that as a gift. And that's sacred. And you got to receive it. And so as you were saying that, we started to kind of think and rethink, at least for me, humanity at work, like what's been my role in this organization that I love and I believe in, and all of you. And started to think about what is my day-to-day, what I've been doing, and maybe what's that legacy? What am I willing to give up? What am I willing to put on the line? Where is my sphere of influence? I have a lot of institutional knowledge in this community thanks to all of you, a lot of relationships. What I realized is that I wasn't spreading that beyond my familiar circle of the folks who are already showing up in the room that I was being reactive to because I wanted to weave the magic between everybody. So if there's no story, there's no message, so I'm going to just tell a quick little story. 12 years ago, my dad and Ryan Honeyman here somewhere, and our friend Andrea Walker came together in San Francisco and created the B Corp Leadership Development Conference. It was largely my dad's idea. And he said, let's do this. About 2 years ago, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And that's been progressing. And fast forward, we had an event to wrap up Level, this program that I'm going to talk about, I promise. And we've been sending him content to listen into and watch while he does his infusions. And I've been running out of content, so if y'all got like TEDx talks, like send them, because that's what he wants. But I sent him the program, the video of our recording of the event we just had together. And there were some things that my friend and my partner here, C. Stanley, said about me that meant a lot to him. And when he can't follow in a conversation and he's kind of losing track, all he says is spread joy. And so I can talk about equitable access, our standards, our cost, the legal requirement. It's probably not a surprise that the exact requirements that we ask companies to certify is almost spot on at the disproportionate impact and what that experience looks like for historically marginalized entrepreneurs trying to join this community. But I'm going to talk about joy. And so I've always seen hugs at this retreat. That's special, I know my time. But I saw some hugs last night at the opening reception that hit different. And that was between some of these consulting firms and some of these companies that participate in Level. And so I'm indebted. I appreciate all these entrepreneurs who came. I appreciate a lot of the men in this room and other folks who made that possible. I appreciate all the partners and the consulting firms, Impact Growth Partners, Decade, Cultivating Capital for trusting this work. I appreciate Jorge Fontanez for your respect and for you supporting this work, because it starts with you too. And this is a beautiful gathering of belonging. So I chose Joy, but Level is a program that surrounds these entrepreneurs who want to join this community with the support it takes, not just to certify. This isn't about diversifying our community. That might happen as a result of work like this, but that's not the intention. It's about building and slowing down to build a right relationship with the entrepreneurs that are facing what this systemic racism in our capitalistic system has created. And we are long overdue and indebted in this work to make that happen and make this a space of belonging that is relevant, it's worthwhile, and it's joyous. So I appreciate you all. You're going to hear from other Level folks. All I ask is just listen fully, be there, believe in this work, and I appreciate all of you who are putting this area of work into your daily lives that I or B-Lab don't know, but we're here for it. and I appreciate y'all getting to work.
So I am Aurora Archer, and I am the CEO of the Opt-in. In the latest report from McKinsey, the 6 levels across corporate America, starting from entry level to the C-suite, the representation of Black, Indigenous, and people of color has increased an underwhelming 2% in the last 8 years. I want you to sit with that for a minute. At the Opt-in, we believe that the work that we create is a byproduct of the human that we are. And our goal is to create a world where the work that gets created represents all identities, meaning we get a seat at the decision-making tables. I got a chance to sit at those seats and at those tables. I, as a Black Latina, spent over 25 years traversing the halls of corporate America, where most of my peers, most of my bosses, and definitely all of my board of directors were 99% white. And as a kid who grew up in the barrios of San Antonio, Texas, and I'm the proud product of a Mexican immigrant housekeeper and a Black cowboy cook from Texas, I was completely the unlikely candidate that anyone assumed would scale the ladder at corporate America. And not only scale it, actually navigate the executive rooms to helm multi-million-dollar campaigns, launch global billion-dollar products, not just in the retail industry, launched them and did it in the tech industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, and in publishing. And you know what I got to tell you, my friends? It was hard. And it wasn't hard because of the work. It was hard because of the environment. It was harder than it needed to be for me to bring ideas and innovation that put millions, and actually in several cases, billions of dollars on the top line of my brand and company's P&L. It was harder than it needed to be for us to reimagine the research process so that we could redesign the customer journey so that it included all of us, not just dominant culture and their needs. It was harder than it needed to be for me to hire a diverse team that embodied literally cross-cultural collaboration and exceeded every metric in my company's organization from a performance perspective. It was harder than it needed to be. And so today, in this moment, as a propelled by the Level Program Certified B Corp, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm here to ask Mi nueva comunidad. I'm here to ask you, how will you catalyze your leadership to create change that represents a greater inclusion and representation of all of us? Not just in your organizations, but that you stand up as a visible model for the rest of corporate America. Because that's the power that is in this room. And so, mi nueva gente, mi nueva familia, my ask is that this work is not over. When you look at those statistics, quite honestly, most of us feel that the work has literally just begun. That's right, snap, snap. And so today, I need you, me, you, all of us to level up and create the change, not only in your organizations, but to create the change in our communities and to create the change in our business community as a whole so that it represents all of us. Mil gracias. Thank you so much.
Join me in a warm welcome for Shane Grant and Jorge Fontanez.
Amazing. Testing my mic as I get up. Aurora, thank you for sharing your story. I relate to you so much with your experience. Thank you for sharing your story. And welcome, Shane.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So it's interesting, actually, to reflecting on Aurora's experience, because we're here to talk about what it means to scale a movement and level up with multinational companies in particular. And so let me start out, Shane, by saying, well, we'll kind of go high level and then maybe go deeper into understanding your leadership, but also a little bit more of the history of Danone North America and Danone as a global brand, and how it came to be that you got to be in this seat with me. I feel very lucky, you know, as I mentioned, Aurora's story really speaks to me, because when you get to sit in a role like ours with the title of CEO, it comes with some interesting opportunities and challenges. So in recent years, the concept of stakeholder capitalism really has emerged. So we've got the Business Roundtable, we've got institutions like BlackRock talking about the role of the purpose corporation, the benefit corporation. And for us, B-Lab is a way to solve some of the biggest challenges that we're raising in today's conversations. More large companies are pursuing certification, you might know, and some have become B Corps, like Danone. And for large multinational companies, the shift from shareholder governance to stakeholder governance, more in support of our stakeholder capitalism model, is a huge and complex journey. So, and it requires a cultural shift, right? Aurora talked about the environments that we often are navigating. So Shane, how has the shift towards stakeholder capitalism been possible at Danone?
Thanks, Jorge. And firstly, it's fantastic to be here. This is my first retreat.
Mine too, by the way.
Happy to be here and have this conversation, especially after a few years. I think, you know, first and foremost for us, this shift, as you described it, Jorge, is pretty natural for our business because of the business and the heritage of our business. And, you know, for those of you that may not know, you know, 50 years ago, a very famous for Danone CEO, Antoine Rabou, made for our business what it became a very iconic statement and iconic speech. And in fact, it was 30 years ago last month. which declared that the role of business and the role of Danone was going to have a role beyond the factory gates, and that the role of business was both a societal role or a human role and an economic role, and that our job was to balance that tension. So, for us, that sort of founding statement of our company, I would say, is deeply ingrained in the culture of our company today. It's natural, therefore, that that has flowed through to our mission, which is health through food to as many people as possible, which then naturally flows through to a stakeholder model and B Corp certification and everything that entails. I think probably the second thing I would say is that the idea that those two models are somehow at odds, I think we reject. And what I mean by that is, I think very firmly embedded in our growth strategy is the idea that a model that regenerates is a growth model. Because, you think about our business works and is ultimately successful as a commercial operation if it answers to consumers, to customers, and to our people. That's what fuels our business. And so the extent to which we can gear our business to multiple stakeholders really is, I would say, the unlock for growth. And that's been important for our business, in the last couple of years.
So let's talk about that. It's interesting. So growth accelerates the work and this shift to stakeholder capitalism. How have you and how has Danone been engaging employees in particular in this work? What does the journey look like for a multinational? And just for a bit of background, so Danone has been certifying its divisions now globally for a few years now, and the goal is to certify 100% of its subsidiaries by 2025.
Correct.
You've got some work ahead of it.
We have.
Yeah.
We're 70% of the way there, but we've got some work ahead.
That's right. So how are you engaging employees in the journey itself?
Well, I think the journey, I think for a multinational can appear a bit daunting. The certification process, and Bart and I were talking about this over lunch, is pretty scary. This is a giant test, and big companies don't like to fail tests.
Right.
It's not in the DNA of big corporations or any of our businesses. So I think one of the ways that we've engaged our people and our company, I would say, at scale, is starting small and moving from there. But most importantly, starting. So if I think about our journey, we started with one of our businesses in North America before my time at the business, so I take absolutely no credit for this, with Happy Family, a small baby food business essentially based out of New York. That then became the North America business that then progressively has led to 70% of our businesses worldwide and will lead to 100% of the business by 2025. And I think, what I've learned going through the recertification is that, and back to your people question, this is a real inside-out process. Yes, it has a sort of a test nature to it and a certification nature, and it has to have that. But through the process, it challenges the business, and therefore creativity in the business emerges. And it's very powerful for our people. It's powerful for the business model, but it's really powerful for our people too, to enroll them in the process, enroll them in what it means to create a better business, both in terms of performance and purpose.
So you mentioned it's 50 years that you're marking of the Dual Project. I noted Antoine Marseille's quote is, "There's only one planet and we only live once." This is what he was preaching 50 years ago. How are you marking the 50 years of the Dual Project? What does it mean to Danone today?
I would say it means a renewal of the commitment and a renewal of who we are. And of course, that gets marked with signatures like B Corp and our recommitment to that. But it's also, I think, a re-enrollment in what we fundamentally believe our business model is, which is fundamentally we believe our business is more competitive by this integration of performance and purpose. And so we celebrated the 50 years in every country that we operate in. We had a very big day in our business here in New York and in Colorado in the US. And a lot about, for our people was about celebrating where we've been, celebrating our performance, because we believe that's part of the proof of the model, by the way, that our business really performs, so we can prove the model at scale. but also challenging ourselves for what's next and sustaining that and proving the model at even more and more scale.
So I'm curious, I want to talk about your leadership, Shane, because you joined as CEO in the midst of the pandemic, much like me. And, you know, I'm curious what kinds of challenges you faced. I mean, I joined an organization that was remote first. I hadn't met a lot of the team in person until many months later in some cases. And we were also operating in an environment where we were using tools to help enhance communication and building a culture online. But what kind of challenges did you face in May of 2020, in particular, just a couple months into the pandemic?
Well, I think, I'm glad we had that shared experience. That was an interesting, hopefully once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Yeah, yes.
You know, I think a few things. I think, you know, firstly for us, and for me as a new leader in the business at that time, COVID, you know, from a business perspective, was both challenge and opportunity. The challenge was pretty straightforward, which was a human connection challenge. And from a new leader perspective, that required, I would say, an outsized investment in quantity. Yes, quality, but more so, if I'm honest, quantity. Quantity of connection. Understanding that all of our people were going through a different version of COVID for themselves. And what I needed to do is understand and know our people in a really authentic way. Now, in some ways, being on a screen with our dog and our kids and the chaos of all of our lives behind us actually helped break down a lot of barriers. But I do think the fundamental challenge of COVID from a leadership perspective was a connection one. The opportunity, I would say, was, you know, particularly as a new leader and particularly for a business that had not performed to its potential for a number of years, actually, was a real reset of our business and a reset of it strategically, culturally, and we did that. You know, we reauthored the strategy of our business from the ground up, knowing that some of the shifts that happened during COVID were here to stay. You know, you think about the desire for health and what that means, flexitarian at scale, et cetera, that was a real opportunity for our business. Mm-hmm. It was also, I would say, a bit of a reset in terms of what scaling our mission meant. And, you know, we developed a pretty strong mantra at that point, and we use it today, which is health on the shelf, which is, you know, it's great to have a really healthful portfolio, and we do, you know, one of the best in the food industry. But unless it's available on the shelf at scale, you're really not impacting society. And so sort of in the spirit of, you know, amateurs talk strategy and experts talk logistics,
right.
It got us really back into the discipline of just really good fundamentals to scale the mission. Yeah, I think maybe, you know, to take a step back beyond that one period, you know, I do think that, you know, our leadership challenge and my leadership challenge is always about leading through the lens of mission, vision, values. And that was, of course, particularly relevant in COVID. Health through food to as many people as possible. A vision which unashamedly says we want to be the fastest growing large cap consumer goods business in the United States. Mm-hmm. And then our values, you know, which are about humanity, openness, proximity, and enthusiasm. And so our decisions flow through that lens. Mm-hmm. You know, the last thing I would say is that, you know, this leadership challenge and some of the decisions we have to make are not always easy. But being able to filter those through mission, vision, values is really important. But knowing that there's a lot of stakeholders. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think about some of the positions we took on Roe versus Wade, for example. Mm-hmm. You know, we were very public in our position on that. We were fast on our position on that. But that was through the lens of mission, vision, values. A mission that's about health. Values that are about, that include gender equity. And a topic that our people deeply cared about. But back to, you know, leading stakeholders, of course not everyone agrees with that. Mm-hmm. And creating the space for that's really important. The space for that disagreement and those voices in the room. And I probably wouldn't be doing the job here today if I didn't talk about Horizon Organic as probably another very public decision we made that had a lot of stakeholder voices. And we made a decision to exit 89 farms in the Northeast. We did that because of the unsustainability of the business model in that part of the country for us. But we don't take those decisions lightly. We take it in the context of deep human care, our vision, our mission, and also listening. We got a lot of feedback, from government, from this community, from the organic community. And so taking actions to support that community through that transition and to have that community come out the other end, was really important to us. And, we're really pleased with the progress and know we've still got more work to do. But some of these sort of leadership challenges are not always easy.
So I'm curious, Shane, to maybe just share a little bit about your personal experience here as a leader and how you've learned about the impact of business and these decisions that engage many stakeholders. And clearly, as you mentioned, not everyone agrees with the decisions that might be coming out of your organization. But I think every CEO in the room, in particular, can relate to the challenges of having to make business decisions day to day that don't always sync up with everyone. How have the voices of your stakeholders helped inform your leadership and decision making?
I think, back to maybe something we just talked about a little bit earlier, I think we're always driving back to mission, vision, values for the big decisions we make and the small decisions we make every single day. And if it's not coherent with who we are, values, not coherent with the business mission, which is about profitable growth, and we're serious about that because we want to prove the model, and we have stakeholders, including shareholders. And then the mission, health through food. And without exception, when we're at our best, we're coherent on those three things. When we're at our worst, we've drifted from those three things. And so I think that as a filter for us is just really, really critical. I think that part of the model is that sort of recognizing what we can do and what we can't do. A lot of what we can do is through what we sell and how commercially the business comes, meets society. And if I can just give you, one example, we're proud of our portfolio. It's, by and large, a really health-centric portfolio and becoming more so every week and month and year. But what really allows us to impact our mission, which is health through food to as many people as possible, is what, how, and where we sell. Now, the what is no surprise. The consumer demand is for higher protein, lower sugar, flexitarian at scale. So we push the business into that space and really aggressively push the business into that space. And by the way, that also creates better societal outcomes because we're delivering better food at scale. It also really matters how we sell. So, particularly in this macro environment where a lot of families are really struggling. And we see it because of, what we're doing, which is the sales business every single day, we start to see the impact. How we sell matter. Smaller packages for access, larger packages for value matters. And then the where we show up and making sure that our foods reach the kind of communities that should and need good food. Now, of course, with all of those three dimensions, we are incented as a commercial operation to do that because those things will grow the business because they are responding to customers and consumers, but they're also good for humanity and society. And so blending those two parts of our business together through sort of the fundamentals of what we sell, we think is really important.
So let's stay on the business model for a moment and talk about the tensions that arise amongst your stakeholders. Because as we've now grounded ourselves, Danone is North America as a certified B Corp. Today, 70% of your revenues come across the globe from certified companies. It sounds like you're following through on your commitments to deliver purpose and profit at a time when public companies in particular are under pressure. Talk about managing inflation. and the impact that this has on your costs and the potential to pass that on to consumers. So how is it possible for a public company to maintain this commitment, knowing that we believe there's still a lot of short-term pressure from Wall Street, from shareholders, to possibly still prioritize profit over purpose? How do you stay accountable to all these stakeholders, knowing that that tension still exists?
The purpose model is good for business, and we deeply believe that, and we're deeply committed to prove that model out. And the more we embed purpose into our business and what we call hardwiring purpose into the business, the more successful and the more proof points we have of the business being more and more successful. That demand for the integration of performance and purpose is coming from all of our stakeholders, not only the ones you would expect, including, for example, some of our biggest customers. That's a point of advantage for us as a business because they have a purpose agenda too, and we are a scaled supplier and we can help them on that journey. We have evidence all over our business that this is a winning business model. If you just take our yogurt business as just one of our businesses, but it happens to be our biggest, and we're the biggest yogurt business in North America, with hopefully some brands you know and buy. But as we've shifted our business, for example, in the last 2 years to protein, low sugar, probiotics, and plant-based as the lead growth engines for that business, which is doing nothing else but responding to where the consumer is shifting. And by the way, in doing that, we are creating more healthful outcomes. Our business has gone from a no-growth business to a high single-digit growth business, and we're winning in the market. That for us is, of course, that's wonderful for our business and good for our people, but it's really great for societal outcomes. And so, we have proof at the category level, at the brand level, that the model was a source of competitive advantage. I would add one more thing, Jorge, which is, particularly in this environment, part of the competitive advantage is a people advantage. And do you have a people advantage? The
You
B
got
Corp
steps over there for that, by the way.
The B Corp certification is a massive fuel for our people. It's a massive pride point. It's a huge recruitment and retention vehicle. I know all of you sense that and you have that in your own businesses, but I want to tell you it really works at scale too. And so it's a massive pride point and fuel for passion in our business, which I think creates competitive advantage, therefore enables us to satisfy our shareholders as well as stakeholders.
So I want to keep talking about how scale drives impact. Could you provide some examples in which Danone is using its expertise and resources to engage a broader audience of stakeholders? And I'm thinking even beyond your own customer base, right, where you see growth is, and clearly the potential and the opportunities already.
Yeah, I think clearly we're a scale business. We are in North America. We are globally, and as a B Corp member, we take that role, and I think quite a unique role, really seriously. How can we impact this movement and this community and prove out the business model at scale? So firstly, I would say we take that role and we understand it. We understand that role, and we're really committed to it. I think there's a number of ways we bring that to bear. I would say firstly, and I'll use some examples if it's okay. I think the fact that we are a global business means that we have access to resources that we wouldn't otherwise have, even here in the United States. So if you take, for example, the baby formula crisis in this country over the last number of months, which I think, first and foremost, was just an incredible human tragedy that none of us ever thought would happen in North America, and it did. Our scale meant that we could help. And for those of you who don't know, Danone is the market leader in baby formula right across Europe. And for those of you that might know a brand called Aptamil, I hope you've come to see it on a few shelves in the US, available at Walgreens, and others. We could help, because we have that capability in our supply chain. We have a brand that's known, trusted, proven. And So we were able to engage the White House, we were able to engage the FDA, able to engage those leading Operation Fly, and I see some of our team members in the front of the room here that were instrumental in making that happen, and help. Yes, it was interesting for our business, of course, to have our biggest global brand show up in our biggest market. So, of course, there was some commercial excitement around the potential of that long term. But the focus and energy of our team in those months was about how can we fuel the mission and have the mission in action at scale. And, you know, so I think that's a real pride point in terms of, I think, bringing to bear some of our global expertise locally. I think maybe two other quick examples, Jorge, if I can.
Sure.
You know, two is what comes with scale is a lot of capability. And one in particular that I think is really important is our research and innovation capability. What comes with that is we can make healthy food taste good. And we know, in particular in the United States, healthy food needs to taste good, or it's just not going to stick. And back to the mission, health through food to as many people as possible, we can do that. And we can do that because we can make good food a good experience. So being able to drive that capability into the market and into brands and products that people love really matters. The last one I would say that I think comes with, by definition, scale is public-private partnership. Because the industry is not perfect, we are not perfect, but we may have impact because of our scale, but we can have a multiplier via partnerships. And so some of the work we're doing with some of our biggest retailers, for example, to take good food into underprivileged communities, and we have one right now going into parts of Chicago, to change the dynamics of how people eat. And we do that through partnership, not on our own, because we can't do that on our own. We need big retailers to do that. But also the government. And, you know, we're really proud of the commitment we made through the White House Conference on Hunger and Nutrition, the first one in 30 years, unbelievably. And, you know, we were able to make a substantial $22 million commitment to improve the quality of the food we make, improve access, improve research. But again, that's about public-private partnership, and that's, again, about our scale, but magnifying our scale.
So just to bring it back to, you know, sort of the B Corp movement. So we talk about behavior change, we talk about culture and narrative change, we talk about systems change. You're playing in each of those buckets. What does partnership look like for you with the B Corp movement? We have, if you spent a little bit of time in the last day, it's been really interesting just to see the level of engagement. You know, for a lot of our B Corp leaders, this is a side hustle, meaning within their job, they've got a duty, and then they engage outside of their specific role to dedicate to how to actually grow this work through networks, through collectives, and through campaigns. This work is not possible without being an engaged member of the community. So what is Danone currently doing or planning to do or thinking about doing to further advance the work of this community and our movement holistically?
Yeah, a few things. I think, you know, firstly, we're really committed to the advancement of the movement. And I hope you see that given the happy family to North America to 70% to 100% by 2025. We're in. You know, we're really all in. And I think philosophically that's, and deeply cultural, you know, to our business, that's where it starts. I think secondly, I would say we're committed to perform. And of course that's got a commercial angle to it for us. But we talk a lot about inside our business proving the model. Proving the model that the integration of performance and purpose at scale can work. And I think particularly proving that in the context of a multinational corporation and a larger business, you know, we think that's really, really important. I would think that, you know, maybe the last thing I would say is that we embrace sort of the positive tension in what I think is core part of the B Corp movement, which is constant improvement.
Mm-hmm. Continuous improvement,
yeah. Yeah, this idea of continuous improvement is to be embraced. And, you know, our business is not perfect, but it's a collection of, in North America, 6,000 people, and globally 100,000 people trying to do the right thing and a better thing every day. And, you know, and that's a really powerful force, well-purposed. So, you know, we embrace this idea that we are trying to make our business better and constantly improve, but through the processes and the relationship that we have, the recertification, but also, I think more important to that, the daily exchange that we have. You know, you and I, but more importantly, our teams, we're finding new creative ways to move the business forward, improve a new version and a better version of the model. And I think embracing that positive tension in our business is something that I think is actually quite exciting because it drives a constant improvement in our business, but also the purpose agenda of who we are.
Well, I'm super grateful for you spending the time to share your perspectives, and shout outs to your team in the front who also will be sharing more of what Danone is doing alongside many other of our multinational companies who are B movement builders, supporting this broader focus of scaling the movement. And so I want to point out that in your agendas, you'll see scaling with purpose, the role of multinationals in economic systems transformation is coming up. So this conversation is really a kind of teaser to that. I really am grateful for having to get to know you as a leader, but also really thank you for kind of walking us through like some of the challenges as well as the opportunities that you see. I think what we are looking at is encouraging more leaders, in particularly that those of you in the room who might be subsidiaries of larger companies, to engage with your parent companies in the B movement builders opportunity. And we encourage also you all who are privately held companies to also think about engaging with your supply chain. Think about your value chain as opportunities for customers in your ecosystem also to join the movement in the way in which Shane and Danone has already shared to us in some examples. Thank you for your exemplary leadership. We look forward to continuing these conversations, and I hope many of you will continue these conversations with Danone and others who are showing up at the breakout session today. So thank you.